This is Talking Drupal, a weekly chat about web design and development by a group of guys with one thing in common. We love Drupal. This is episode 163, Layout Builder, our first impressions. Hey guys, how you doing?
Great.
Welcome to a recording on Wednesday, which is nice. We're kind of getting in a little groove here, aren't we?
Yeah, we're back to a weekly schedule, even though the day changes.
Yeah, the day changes a little bit, but it seems like we've got some groove going on, which is nice.
That's good.
Yeah, so I'm Stephen Cross, and with me, as usual, is Nick Laughlin from Enlightened Development and John Picozzi from Oomph. Now, we always start with a weather update on this podcast. So, Nick,
your weekly weather update for New
Nick,
England.
How much snow did you get yesterday?
I got between 2 and 3 feet. It was brutal. The wind. I think the 3 feet sections were mostly drifts, but we got a good 2 feet in the back. I got a couple of funny videos of throwing a snowball, my dog running to chase it and disappearing under the snow.
Oh, that's great.
Popping up on the other side, kind of surprised. So, yeah, a lot of snow.
Kept your power and your internet, though.
Yeah, I've been pretty lucky here. I think I've been here a couple of years, 2.5 years maybe, and we've lost power once for maybe 20 minutes. And it wasn't during a storm. It was just in the middle of the day.
That's great.
So,
John, and how did you make out this time? Not good again.
It was all right. Power was out for most of the day yesterday,
right.
And we got quite a bit of snow. And I apologize for the audio quality because it sounds like my house is being hit by mortar fire. It's not. It's just the snow falling off the trees.
Yeah, actually, we can't hear it yet. Anyway, yeah, I just took a little drive a few minutes ago, and driving down the street, there's like snow falling from everywhere. And it's ice, a lot of ice chunks landing on your car.
Yeah, one hit my car earlier today, and I thought like somebody had thrown a rock.
Yeah, exactly. Well, today we're talking about our first impressions of Layout Builder. Just got updated. I think was it already in 8.5? Was it already in 8.4? I can't actually remember now.
I think pieces of it were. I don't know if I remember seeing a reference to it, but I didn't install it until recently.
Yeah, so it came out in 8.5 just a week ago, right? Is it just a week? It's been just a week. So we decided to take a look at it, each of us, and talk about our impressions. It's been a tool that's been needed for quite a long time. There's been some other approaches to do it with things like panels. But it looks like it's going to end up being in core sometime in the near future. So let's start with just maybe some general first impressions.
So I took a look at it. First thing I noticed, there's 3 separate modules. One of them is a dependency and is actually in core. It's not experimental, and that is layout discovery.
Yeah, I found that interesting. So when you install it, there is a requirement, and it requires something that's already in core that I've never heard of.
Exactly. I thought that was kind of interesting. So I think that's just it's an API that allows people to provide layout. So I think the encouraging thing here is that even if the experimental module layout fields and layout UI is the other one, I think, go away, support for something like this is very easy to put back in contrib, since there's kind of like an API already in place. So it's pretty encouraging. I like how they did that. Or maybe layout builder is the other one. Yeah, layout builder, field layout, and layout discovery are the 3 modules.
Field layout isn't required though, right?
No, I think the difference is, we'll talk about issues a little bit later, but one of the issues that I discovered, I tried to uninstall field layout so I could kind of see what the difference is between the two and what it provided. And one of the issues is you cannot uninstall it.
Yeah.
It errors out. So if you try this, make sure you try it. It is experimental. If you try it, make sure you try it on a clean install, because you can't get rid of it.
Certainly some more. I would encourage everyone to give this a try and start playing with it. But keep in mind, this is experimental.
Yeah.
And there's no way it's ready for production. It's not intended to be there. So it's really something you just play with at this point.
So to clarify, layout discovery was in 8.4 or at least 8.4.5 and is stable. It's a core module. It's also in 8.5. Field layout is experimental and was experimental in 8.4.5, and layout builder is now just in 8.5 and is also experimental.
So I think what the difference is, I think field layout, when you're building a layout, you have an option to add blocks or page elements to each individual section. And field layout, I think, gives you access to fields on the content type. It may also have something to do with the form display, but I think it's more about just giving access to the fields on the content type you're looking at for custom layouts.
One of my first impressions of this was, how does it work, and where can I read about it, and where can I find some information to see how to use it? And I couldn't find a lot, and that to me was a little bit, boy, if you're going to put out an experimental module, it'd be great if there's a little bit more supporting content for it. There's a little bit of documentation, and I was able to find a few YouTube videos that just, I could at least sit back and understand what this thing was and what it was trying to do before I tried to use it myself. So certainly there's an opportunity there for someone who wanted to contribute to something like this, but it would be great to, I think more people would use it and get a chance to play with it and provide more feedback if there was a little bit more help to get rolling with it.
Yeah, I agree with that, because I think my very first impression, I saw a couple of YouTube videos too, and most of them just started from the layout portion. They just like, here's the features, look how great it is, and it's certainly pretty impressive. But it took me a couple minutes to figure out how to get there. So I enabled the module. I went to every example video showed somebody on a node and changing the layout of the node. So I went to a node that I created, and there was no layout button. So it turns out that you have to, once you've enabled it, you have to enable it for each individual content type. And you do that by going to the manage display section. So one of the biggest changes is the manage display section. You have the option, I believe there's two options. One is to set a custom layout for that particular content type, but you can also allow individual nodes to have a new layout as well. So you can kind of set a layout for a content type, and that's the layout that's used. Or if you have something where you want to give editors a little bit more control over individual nodes, you can allow that as well.
So the concept of the layout builder in general is a WYSIWYG ability to define a layout on a page. So you can take either at the content type level or at the node level to take something and add some rows and columns to the layout by dragging and dropping and configuring it with blocks. So it's tightly coupled to the block system.
Yeah.
So you have a layout on a page. You say, I want 3 columns on this page. And then you can add blocks into those columns to display content.
Yeah, and it's if you're familiar with panels, some of the interface is similar. You have, if you add a block, you have some options about that particular thing, whether or not you want to override the title, whether or not you want to display the title. I think you can change display modes if it's something that supports that. And one thing that's different than panels is generally everything's in a dialogue. Layout builder puts it on the right hand side in a sliding tray, so it feels faster, more responsive.
Does that sliding tray require the system tray module, the core system tray module?
I don't believe so, because the only requirements were layout, discover, the 3 that we mentioned earlier. So
I also question the use of the block system in this way. Um, seems seems to me that using blocks is kind of the back end driving force for the layout API and the layout system um, is interesting. Does anybody else
What
feel
else would you
feel that
put?
way?
Well, what else would you do?
Yeah, what's the
Other than
alternative?
blocks, what's the alternative?
I don't know. I don't know what the alternative is. I don't have a great solution for this, and I suppose it's a really hard problem to solve. But um, one thing that comes to mind is the way that blocks, the fact that blocks and config don't work overly great together, is a little bit of a concern for me. So
Yeah, I think, I mean, even though I think it's a situation where it's a bit of an overloaded term, I don't think, I mean, you can add blocks to it, but and the word block exists on the layout page, but it doesn't feel to me like the block system.
They are the blocks, though.
I mean,
they are blocks.
You do have that, but when you're, for example, and what I mean by that is when you're on the block, the structure block page, you have the button, you can add a new block, and then you have a list of blocks, you choose it, and then you can add the rules. You don't really have that piece of the interface. It's more, you create the layout and it shows a 2-column layout and it says add block, you click that, and then you can choose what you want, whether it's the title, the body of the field, some other field, taxonomy, or a block that you pre-configured. So say you have a block that has contact information, you want to put that there. And then you'll get that interface, but it feels very different, even though it's kind of building on the same principles. It feels more to me like they use that word block more because it has an intuitive sense to it than trying to imitate the block system in Drupal. But that's a problem that Drupal has.
I guess my point there wasn't so much that it's imitating the block system. I mean, it is using the block system, correct?
Under the hood? I have no idea.
Like if you were to go into like your block layout, would you see all of these layout blocks
you see blocks that now you got me wondering. I believe you see blocks that are in your block system as things you can add to the layout.
Exactly.
Yeah. So if you created a block with a view, that block would show up as something you can stick into that layout.
Right, but you would also see that in your block display in the block menu, right?
No. So if you create something, you're not creating anything in the layout. You're placing things that are pre-existing. So you're not creating something in the layout builder that then will appear in the block structure. You're basically choosing a layout, usually single, double, triple column, and then you can stack those as deeply as you want. And then each individual piece, just like in panels, you're saying, I want this in this section. And that this can be a field on the content type you're on, or it can be something from the block system. You're not creating content, you're not creating pieces. If you want a section on a page, you have to go to the block system to create that block.
I see. So it's just that the layout system is allowing you to implement either fields and field layouts or blocks that are already predefined.
Yeah, and there's also some system level things too that look like you could add as well.
Interesting. Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so it's pretty clear these are first impressions we're giving, right? This isn't expert advice at all, and so take it for what you will.
If you're looking for expert advice, apparently there are a couple of YouTube videos.
yeah, I wouldn't call it expert level either.
This is very new. Like we said, it's just freshly experimental, and it's a pretty cool feature. I enjoyed what I did. I think it really will be interesting down the line. I'll talk about we'll talk about later. Places we think it will go. But overall, I think it's interesting.
What I found interesting about when you enable it, so without this module enabled, you go to your content type and you see the section for manage the form What are the titles there?
So you have manage form display and
Manage
display.
form display, and then manage display. When you click on manage display without this enabled, you click there and then you see the list of all your fields. When you enable this module, that goes away. So when you click manage display, you see a layout button there now, and it takes you right into the layout section.
Yeah. So one of the things, so that was the first kind of little gotcha. Like I said, it didn't take me too long to find it, but I was clicking around a bit. I thought it might have been in the edit content type, but it's like you said in the manage display. You lose that list of fields, but you still have the ability to have custom display settings. So you can still have a teaser.
Right.
I don't quite understand why that still exists, because I don't think you can use it. Although you can still check things and add new view modes. So I think that's one of the outstanding questions. I assume that will go away in a later version. But here, when you add the layout, like you said, the fields go away and you get two other options. One is manage layout. And when you click on that, you get get brought to a section where you can manage the layout for that particular content type. And that's the default layout. And there's also an option at the bottom that says allow each content item to have its layout customized. So you can customize each individual page. As we're looking at this now, one other thing I realized is it looks like there's no way to go away from using this. So if you say for a content type to manage use layouts, you can't go back to the fields.
Right. That's what I was noticing as well.
Oh, but it does look like each individual display setting you can have a different layout. Okay, right. So that makes sense. I guess that's why the display settings is still there. I always forget about the tabs, but yeah, so you can have a teaser layout, you can have a default layout. But if you, again, just like we said earlier, if you install this, don't install on a site that you plan on putting production at some point, because you can't get rid of it. And it looks like you can't, if you choose the layout, you can't not use it. So make sure you're just experimenting with it at this time.
And I mean, that's the overall theme, right? And the reason that the Drupal community is doing these experimental modules is so that people can get into them and get acquainted with them and play with them before they become kind of the mainstream or the norm.
Yeah, I think so. I think the reason why I'm emphasizing that a bit more is there were other experimental modules that you could use, and like migrate was experimental for a long time, but it was still something you could use fairly reliably. This one's a little bit different.
Was Big Pipe, Big Pipe's something I was using as an experimental module right along. But it is worth noting that this seems very different. And the fact that, do you think the fact that you can't go back from using a layout to just the regular display settings is concerning, or is that?
I think that's just I think it's just something that has been added yet. I think eventually that feature will be added in where you can, disable it for a particular content type. I don't think that's one of the reasons why it's experimental. So let's talk a little bit about the different kinds of layouts, because there's a bunch of different options. When you go to the manage display page, you say that you want to use layouts. You get a button that says manage layout. When you click on that, you get you go to a page that has a bunch of dotted lines. And kind of outlines what is available. You have above and below each section you have an add section. So you can add a section above or below any pre-existing layout that you have. And when you click add section, you get the tray slides in from the right. And by default, you get 5 options. You can add a single column, 2 column, something called a 2-column bricks, which is 2 columns, single column, 2 columns, 3 columns, which is split one way, and then the 3 column, which is split evenly. So you get quite a bit of flexibility. I mean, I can certainly see situations where you might need something a little bit different here or there, which you can define your own layouts. But for most use cases, I think this is pretty. You can get pretty much any layout that you need.
I'm envisioning this is tied to the themes. I didn't look at how to create new layouts, but I'm imagining someone could provide a theme that has 15 different layouts in there.
Yeah. So that's the layout discovery module is that API, and it's called out explicitly for allowing modules or themes to provide their custom layout. So yeah, it's pretty powerful. I think that this will. We'll talk a little bit more about this later again, but I think this will certainly covers a lot of the same space that panels provides. I think it's really interesting because in Drupal 8, especially now, the Drupal world is moving strongly towards using paragraphs to define individual pieces of content. And at first, when I was looking at this, I was wondering if it would give you the ability to kind of just take content, make components out of it, and rearrange them however you want. So instead of having, paragraphs that define specific pieces of content, you just have a paragraph that is text, a paragraph that is image, a paragraph that is video, and you can just arrange it however you want. And this isn't quite like that because it doesn't give you, for example, if you have a multi-value field, it doesn't let you take, the first value and put it here and the second value, put it there, at least not yet. Maybe at some point it will. But it just gives you the ability to kind of make one page 2-column and another page single column, depending on what's in there.
Isn't that so we've done a lot of work with paragraphs and you the point that you raise about a multi-value field and being able to put each value in its own place. I mean, isn't that more of a content architecture problem than really like a layout builder problem, right? So if you have a multi-value field, typically those things should be kept together in one kind of layout, right? You're not going to try to split them out to different things.
Yes and no. The reason why I bring that up is, so for example, if you have say you have a website that needs to have 3 different components. One is a text block, which just takes up the full width. One is an image in text where the image is 50% on the left and the text is 50% on the right. And the same thing, and it's reversed. Right now, you essentially need 3 different paragraphs, one which is text, one which is image on left. And so, eventually, I think this is starting down the path where instead of having to have those 3 different options, with Drupal, you can just say, hey, I want to put an image here. I want to put text over here. So you kind of get the WYSIWYG experience of putting media wherever you want without getting the messy WYSIWYG output that we've been fighting against.
That's really interesting, and was going to be one of my questions or comments is like, how do you think paragraphs? Let me ask you this: do you think that's a paragraphs issue, or do you think it's a limitation of the layout API?
Well, I don't think it's necessarily either at this point. I mean, they're both. I mean, paragraphs is a little bit more mature, obviously, but I think the Drupal community is still kind of evolving and figuring out exactly where it's going to land on some of this stuff. I think it's something to think about, but I don't think it's necessarily. After first impressions, I don't think it's necessarily a problem that Layouts is trying to solve right now. It's more of, I think, a vision of the future where at some point I can see where something like this could solve that problem.
Yeah, so I mean that's a really interesting point because we use paragraphs pretty heavily, and we actually kind of do what Layouts is trying to do with paragraphs, where we have typically we break things into rows or columns, and then you're able to position different paragraph components to kind of achieve the layout that you're looking for. And it'd be great to be able to use layout in core to do the same thing. But I mean, a lot of times you want to give the user a typically we call them flexible content areas, right? Where you can just, hey, put all of, any different amount of paragraph bundles you want in this area, and then we'll lay it out appropriately. Having individual fields for all that stuff on a content type seems like in a lot of cases it would end up being very cluttered.
Yeah, and I think the reason why I was thinking about this is the paragraph, I think, is a great solution for that problem, in allowing people to have some flexibility while still having certain constraints on, what content goes where. The issue is when you're editing a page, sometimes there's a disconnect between what you have in the editing page and what it ends up, outputting. And you can certainly set up rules so it never looks bad, but sometimes editors have a little bit of difficulty translating that. And this UI is pretty slick. It's pretty apparent when you're looking at the blocks and you're placing, the title or the author field or something, like it shows right there and you know exactly what you're doing. So I think it's, I think we're a ways away from there, but I think it's something to watch out for.
It's definitely on our radar.
So, one of the things that I noticed that was very different, we talked about the managed display, and I think this might be, I think in its current form, I don't know how much I'll use that layout builder for the managed display, because, partly because I'm so used to using templates and views and things like that. But I think one place where I might use it more readily is the managed form display. So Drupal 8 introduced managed form display, which kind of allows you to rearrange the form fields on the edit page.
Hey, Nick, let's just go back to what you just said, that you wouldn't use the layout for what? I'm not following what you're saying. You don't find yourself using it because you use views? I don't think I don't see how they're connected.
Yeah, let me clarify that. So okay. I don't think I'll be using the layout builder too much, because for a couple of reasons. One is the main point of it is to give the editor control over layout. Mm-hmm. And most of the sites that I work on, the editor doesn't need a lot of control. So when we need a layout, I usually use templates or use views to pull a piece of content in, rather than giving the editor control over that. I'll probably use it for more simple layouts, because if you need to make something 2-column right now, this is a really easy way to do that. So, I might use it for something like that. But if I have a page that needs a complex layout, I'll just build that in template. So that's what I meant there.
All right, thanks.
No problem.
So that actually raises another point, and I don't know in your testing whether you got into theming this sort of stuff at all, but I'm wondering how the theming is changing now if you're using layout, the layout builder versus just a regular kind of node layout.
Well, for me, I played with this probably 3 hours, so I haven't gone into theming or anything like that yet. That will be our second look, I think.
Right. Yeah. Same question is how it works responsively.
Yeah. Lots of questions that. Yeah.
Yeah. I have no idea. There's a lot of unresolved questions and things that we didn't even think of looking at. So if you have questions, feel free to send those to us at our email. Or send it
which is what Nick?
I don't know the email. That's why I went to Twitter, because I know that Twitter is Talking Drupal.
It's show@talkingdrupal.com.
Show@talkingdrupal.com. Yeah. I know that just changed.
Yeah.
So yeah, if there's anything you'd like us to take a look at, send us a quick message and we'll take a look at it. So as I was saying, I think a piece that I'll probably use more readily is there's the managed form display also allows you to use layouts. And so the interface is similar to kind of field groups. If you choose like a 3-column layout, it gives you the ability to have, there's a top section, a left column, center column, right column, and a bottom section. You can just drag and drop the fields wherever you want them. And it seems to work pretty much exactly as you'd expect. So it's a really easy way to kind of organize, the edit page into, more logical layout without having to edit the theme. So looks like it's a pretty nice feature. Something I didn't expect.
Does it provide like the tab groups that Field Groups does? Or is
no, I didn't see that.
So it's just more of like a, hey, if you wanted like 3 columns of editable, like edit fields, you could have 3 columns of edit fields as opposed to one long column.
That's what I saw. Or 2 columns, or 1 column, 2 columns, and then 3 columns or something. But it seems like a pretty straightforward way to arrange the node create form. So it's pretty nice.
So I assume you ran into issues. I ran into issues with it.
I did.
Very buggy. I couldn't seem to get any of the customization to the fields to work. Like if you drop the title field into the layout, I couldn't get like the hide label or any of that stuff to work properly.
I saw that you noted that issue, so I didn't actually test that.
Yeah.
Personally,
but I mean, these are, I mean, for us to even be pointing out issues is just not right. I think it's more of, hey,
just makes us jerks.
Yeah, it's just jerks.
No,
but it's more of be aware that this really, as cool as it kind of is when you first start to play with it, when you actually try to lay something out specifically, you're going to run into issues, and you should get that because it's experimental.
Yeah, I think that the 2 big things that jumped out at me, besides not being able to uninstall anything, is one is a UI thing. So I created a layout on the article, and I think I set it up so that it was 2 column and then 1 column below that. And I decided that I wanted the 1 column above. And so you expect, because in Drupal you expect to be able to drag and drop. So say take the bottom section and move it up. There doesn't appear to be a way to do that. For most layouts, it's not a big deal. You can just remove it, and you can add it again above. But I can see that becoming really tedious, especially in more complex layouts. And there doesn't seem to be a way. If somebody working on this is listening, this is a feature request. I think that would certainly make me consider using it more. There doesn't seem to be a way to add multiple default layouts for a specific content type and allow the person creating the node to choose which layout to use. It's either a display gets 1 layout, or you give the end user the ability to create their own layout, which again would be, if they have to do that every single time, would become tedious. So if you have the ability to save a couple of different layouts, and then somebody's creating say it's a blog post, and they have a 3 column blog post and a 2 column blog post. When the person's creating it, they can say this is 2 column or this is 3 column when they're creating it. That would be a really nice feature.
Right. Yeah.
So one question I had on that is, while you guys were testing this, did either of you get a white screen or the standard Drupal error, like the site encountered a problem?
Yeah, but only when I was trying to uninstall it. And the full error was a doozy. Let me, I'll pull it up while.
I did see intermittently I had trouble getting that side panel to show up sometimes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I would click like add block, and it would just kind of sit there and nothing would show up.
I found that related to the sidebar, just actually really quick before I go into that, it was a type argument 1 past a closure must implement interface, and then there's about 35 lines of errors. So it was a big error when I tried to uninstall it. Wasn't happy. Yeah. The only thing that I experienced, and I can't really say this is a bug, it was more just confusing with that tray, was there's a lot of options on there that are just empty. So like if you choose it, it gets added, but there's nothing there. So like for example, if you have a body field and you add the body field to one of the blocks, that body field will automatically show up. And so you can see, I just added the body there. Like it's very clear, it's very easy. But if the body field is empty, then there's no indication that anything was added there. So the first test node that I was working on, there was nothing in the body field that just added a title. So I ended up adding the body, I think 4 times to the same block because there was nothing there. It was just empty. And then I was like, oh, wait, maybe there's no body here. And so I hit edit, added a body, hit save, and then the body showed up 4 times on the left. Yeah. So, I think it might be nice, so there's certainly some UI things that are a little quirky. But again, it's hard to say all that stuff should be worked out. It is experimental. I do have to say, after using it, I hope that it gets the care it needs to become a full module. It certainly feels useful. I think one thing we kind of briefly touched on, but didn't spend a lot of time on, is kind of how it relates to panels. And I think that's important to address. I think personally, it replaces panels. I think it does almost everything that panels does, but
well, I don't know. Panels there's a lot of contributed modules around panels to do all kinds of stuff.
That's true. I should say the full ecosystem of panels isn't replaced, but I think panels core functionality, and I think it has 3.
The objectives are similar.
Yeah, I think it has 3 huge advantages, and that's just because it's in core. One is because it's in core.
Yeah, that's support. Obvious. Yeah.
It has a much better name.
That's the advantage. It's true. I mean,
wouldn't
we all love to just rename paragraphs too, by the way?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like, everybody in Drupal knows views. Everybody in Drupal knows panels. But like when you're just starting out, you don't have any idea to look for those. And because it's in core and has a better name, it also has better discoverability. So, I mean, I think adoption will go up. It personally feels much lighter weight as well. I know with panels, it always feels super slow when you're working with it. But every time I clicked on something, aside from the couple of UI quirks that I mentioned, every time you clicked on something, it felt like it responded immediately. So
I think it's an awesome start, frankly, and I think this has been needed as core for so long, something like this. So this is fantastic to see. I do think it's going to be a little bit till we get this thing to a release, but this thing is a great start, and I think it's well thought out from what I can tell. And I'm interested to play with it a whole lot more. The problem with things that are experimental is that you can't really use them in anything, and that's when you usually find out how good something is, and the things that you really like is when you can invest time in doing something real, and it's hard to invest in an experiment.
I should say
real.
If you want to experiment, a good way to do that, which is the way I did it, is use Simply Test Me. Because then you can just, it's a throwaway environment anyway, so you don't have to worry about setting everything up and then,
I did it similar. I fired up a new project in Pantheon.
Okay.
Same kind of thing, and I can play with it and do stuff with it. It doesn't go away.
Yeah, but Pantheon doesn't go away.
Simply Test Me kind of goes away. So Pantheon's great for that, to set up these little quick projects to test stuff.
We're gonna get an email from Pantheon later saying, "Hey, everybody's setting up these empty layout."
That's what they want, man. That's what it's there for, is to use like that, and it's a great way to do it. So, anything else we want to say about this? The purpose of this show today was to encourage people to play with this, and hopefully, we've given you enough information that you're encouraged to do that and spend a little time with it. And even as we're sitting here going through things, I see some stuff that I'm interested to look at a little more. Like, I was sitting here wondering if I added a paragraph, if I install paragraphs, does that show up in my tray at all when I go to build a layout? Is there something connected there in any way?
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I wonder, because it does show you all the fields for the content type. right? So I'm wondering how it interacts with paragraphs.
Well, you would see the field that's referencing a paragraph,
Right.
but the question is, can
what
you
does
just
it do?
add
Yeah.
Oh no, yeah, I don't think it will because it doesn't show the entities. It only shows the field. So it would show
It
the
doesn't
field that
show
contains the
entities?
paragraph.
I don't
Yeah.
know. Does it?
Yeah, because it doesn't show it doesn't show you the other content types. So it's not going to show the paragraph.
lay
Yeah,
out
it shows you
multiple-
content type is an option that you can add.
Is it? No
yeah.
way.
Yeah, it is.
How did I miss that? Okay, wait. Let me. I've got it open right here.
Here we
Can
go.
you, can you add multiple fields? So like if you wanted to lay out and have like one title field and then another title field, like one
Yes.
at the top and one at the bottom.
Yes, you can. As I mentioned before, I realized that empty fields don't show anything. I added the body field 4 times.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can.
So, I mean, that could be a way that you could put your paragraphs in there where you have one paragraph field that has all of your different components in it. And then you just basically add a new field with a different component within it every time.
Where do you see the content types? I don't see that.
I thought I thought I saw a content type there when I was playing with it. Maybe.
Oh, so I see. Yeah. So just
content.
Just so our
this
listeners.
thing
Yeah, I
called
see.
content type.
Oh yeah. Oh no, but that just tells you the content type that you're currently on.
Okay,
So that'll be like
right.
article.
Okay.
So yeah, the major sections for our listeners are content,
tray,
which is everything related to the node you're on, like the title, ID, that kind of thing. Core, which looks like meta tags and some tabs and things. Forms, like they use a login form. Help, views, which they call lists for some reason. Menus, system, and user. So it's pretty. It's in pretty good shape. One other issue I have with it is core isn't capitalized and everything else is. I think that needs to be fixed before the next version.
Submit a patch.
I'm going to. I'll do that later today. But yeah, I am extremely impressed with this first offering. I think it might be worth mentioning as well at this time. The only other experimental modules right now are migrate, I believe. So it should get a fair amount of attention, I think, because there's only a couple of experimental modules right now.
Yeah, so install it on your favorite testing tool or environment and have to it and jump on that issue list and submit things as you see them. So
I'm
great.
very impressed.
Hey, anything else you want to mention with this before we end the show? I take that as a no. Awesome.
Yeah, I think that covers it.
Great. So, Nick, where can people find you if they're interested in chat with you more about
You can find
about
me
the new
shoveling.
panels?
You can find me shoveling outside, trying to get all the snow away. You can find me online pretty much everywhere at Nixvan, NICXVAN.
And John, people can see you this coming weekend. This will be out after that, though. So that's not very helpful.
Me.
You may have seen John.
Might have seen me at the Nerd Summit on Saturday.
And if you saw him, you may have seen me as well.
If you didn't see me there, you can see me at DrupalCon in April on the social media platform of your choice at John Picozzi. And you can read up about Oomph and what we're doing at oomphinc.com.
Awesome, man. I'm Stephen Cross. You can find me on the Twitter at Stephen Cross with a PH. Take care, guys, and talk to you next week.
See you next week.
Have a good one.
Bye.